We've been talking to Illeana Ros-Lehtinen, who is the ranking member now on the Foreign Affairs Committee and chair lady of the Committee on the Middle East. But we were talking about the whole question of a relationship between China and Cuba and now you say North Korea.
That's right. You know, Lester, we will never know until something is discovered the real relationship that's going on between China and Cuba. Why do I say that? We did not know the depth of the cooperation between North Korea and Cuba until just a month ago, when a ship, North Korean flag ship, was intercepted, stopped in the Panama Canal, inspected by the Panamanian officials and international supervisors, and they found MiG airplanes, all kinds of weapons. And what Castro says is, well, these are outdated equipment, military equipment from the last century. The last century was just 13, 14 years ago. And we were getting it fixed in North Korea, and maybe they were going to return it to us. This was containers full of military equipment coming from Cuba to North Korea. Thank goodness the Panamanian officials flagged it, inspected it. They thought they were going to stop narcotics. Little did they know that it was military equipment. And it's already against all kinds of United Nations Security Council resolutions to get anything on a North Korean flagged vessel. So now we know that about the close cooperation with North Korea. What will we know soon about the Chinese involvement in Cuba? We have known that there's an intelligence facility in Lourdes, a town in Cuba, Lourdes, Cuba, that is very sophisticated equipment, and it was all built by the Chinese for the Cuban officials. Is it because they're interested in Cuba? No, it's because Cuba is so close to the United States, and that's what it's a listening post located in Lourdes. Is it functioning? What is going on over there? We really don't know. Cuba is like North Korea in the sense that it's the hermit kingdom, and very little is known in spite of so much travel between the countries.
Well, while we're on the subject of China, have you looked into the situation, the Chinese with these islands in the Pacific?
They are really trying to take over. They are trying to expand their territory, expand their sovereignty, and extend their military might, and being very belligerent about the control of these waters, and saying that it is in their territory. And you know, that's been long in dispute, and many authorities will tell you that it does not belong to China, but they say, and they're citing all of these ancient maritime laws, saying that it's their property, and it's their way of intimidating their neighbors to let them know, you know, that China of the past, we're still here, and we control the South China Sea, and we control the Yellow, we control it all. This is our area, and they will continue to be belligerent. They will continue to be antagonistic, and they are putting us to the test and putting our allies to the test as well.
I'm going to ask you a pointed question. Is this all because you are an anti-communist?
You know, I am proudly an anti-communist and a pro-democracy advocate. I think communism has been a failed experiment in human history. It is a government type that has not proven to be successful. People want to be free. They don't want the communist government dictating their personal needs. Now, what Castro wants to do is he wants to adopt the Chinese model to Cuba. What does that mean? China has a lot of freedom, economic freedom for the people. You can own your business, you can trade, you can barter, you can do all kinds of business deals.
Just don't get involved in politics.
Don't get involved in politics. You can't really have a free system of elections. You don't have political parties. You can't choose your leaders, really. It's all the Chinese regime. So that is the kind of model that Cuba aspires to be, but they're an economic basket case. They've not been able to do it. Vietnam has adopted that model too. Economic freedom, but a stranglehold on any other type of freedom. So we don't want the Chinese or the Vietnam model to be used in Cuba.
Moving from China to Taiwan, you recently put in a bill to, in some way, update the Taiwan Relations Act.
Boy, you've been following my work. This guy's dangerous. I sure have. You know, Taiwan is a close ally of the United States, and we do not do enough to strengthen those ties, to highlight those ties. It's a democracy. They're a good trading partner. They are always with us, and we've got to stand with Taiwan. And we've got to tell the North Koreans and the Chinese, you cannot be the owners of Taiwan independence and Taiwan solidarity. They want to be free. They want to be independent of you, and we don't show it enough. So I hope that with a change in administration, we stand up on behalf of Taiwan. You know, it's shameful that, when I get a little bit of water, that Taiwanese officials come to the United States and we are not allowed to meet with them in Washington. We have to meet with them at some remote location, and their travel is carefully curtailed. If they go to New York, if they go to Washington, they have to be very careful. And this is a free people, and they're going to be swallowed up by communist China. I'm not afraid to use that term. China is a communist regime. We need to help Taiwan, and we need to stand in solidarity with them.
Well, you know, you talk, and I talk about this, and this is a day before their National Day, which occurs tomorrow.
Yes. Now tell me about your days in U.S. Congress. You were here when the Taiwan Relations Act, which is the cornerstone.
I was the author of it.
You were there. You were the author of it. It's the cornerstone. Tell me about how difficult that was, or how easy it was.
Well, it was difficult because of the fact that some people wanted to go too far, and other people wanted to put great restrictions. Taiwan was a different society then than it is today. Taiwan was a dictatorship, actually. But the important thing that happened is the fact that at that time, Carter actually didn't tell the Congress, but he de-recognized Taiwan and recognized China. And it created a lot of problems because this was the only ally that we had in Asia. And it was a difficult situation.
Well, that was in what year?
78.
And to this day, your bill remains the cornerstone upon which we build all the laws in our relationship with Taiwan. It remains, it's like the North Star.
Thank you. But
and then Jerry Solomon,
yes,
from upstate New York, was very active in that.
Jerry
also
was,
after you.
Yes. Actually, a number of members were very active because we were concerned that Carter was doing something, and of course it was all started by Henry Kissinger and
Yes.
Nixon at the time, if you remember, because Nixon actually recognized China and de-recognized Taiwan. I want to get away from there.
Okay.
I'd like to get to the Middle East because that's an area
Nothing's happening there, right?
that's an area that it's a tinderbox.
It is. Lots of hope, but a lot of challenges.
How about Syria right now?
Well, Syria, you know, it's interesting when we look at what's going on in Iran. We have this new leader, Rouhani, and he, in his UN speech just a few weeks ago, he said he lamented the bloodshed in Syria. And we're thinking, this is like a brave new world. He is the man who, along with Russia and China, is arming Assad so that he can continue to butcher his own people. And here Rouhani, looking like a moderate, he says he laments the brutality of the loss of human life. He's part and parcel of it. So that bloody civil war is going to continue. I think that the president lost a lot of credibility when he said this is a red line if they use chemical weapons, and then tried to go to Congress. Congress was not going to be supportive. And then he decided we're not going to get a vote. And he decided, well, they're going to They're going to disarm. They're going to get rid of their chemical weapons, and I think the world takes notice of that. They saw that as a sign of weakness on behalf of the United States, that we were not ready to hold Assad accountable for his crimes.
But the whole question of the Middle East, why don't you take a little water?
Yeah, you talk for a while.
The whole question of the Middle East, and really the genesis of all of this is almost a question of a religious war, is it not?
And now it's even spiraled more out of control, Lester, because now we've got Iran heavily involved. They fund Hezbollah. It's going to topple, potentially, our allies. Look at Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, a strong friend of the United States, a valiant partner for peace with our ally Israel, the democratic Jewish state of Israel. Jordan now has taken in so many refugees from Syria that one of their tent cities is actually the 4th largest city in Jordan. They have open borders. They tell the people of Syria, we will take you in. And because of traditions and language and customs, Syrians feel more at home in Jordan than they would in other parts. So Syria is now moving to Jordan. A third of the Syrian population has been either internally displaced or externally displaced. What does that mean? They've either moved from their homes to another town in Syria, or they have left Syria altogether. They have spilled over to Turkey. Turkey is not very warm about receiving these refugees, but they have received many. It is so bad in Syria that they're going to Iraq. Iraq remains a very dangerous place, but it's better for them than living where they are. So all of these places where we have allies, where we have resources and a lot of economic interests, they are in danger of imploding from within due to the great influx of refugees who are seeking shelter from this internal civil war, that we have now decided we're going to look the other way and pretend that it's not existing. Now we've turned what was a bloodshed that showed no end in sight to a removal of chemical weapons. But the bloodshed continues.
Yeah.
We just choose not to look at it.
Where does Israel fit in this picture?
Israel is very concerned that with this so-called reformist president, Rouhani, who won an election, but Lester, we should always tell the viewers that when you win an election in Iran, it's not a real election. The Ayatollah selects 8 candidates. He selects the candidates, and then the people vote from that list of candidates. And heaven knows what they do. It's such a closed society. We have no idea whether they actually voted that way or not. But Netanyahu the Prime Minister of Israel, feels a great sense of foreboding about what's going on in Iran. Because Rouhani comes to the UN, he smiles, he says all the right things. He talks about the bloodshed in Syria, and he talks about he even doesn't say that the Holocaust didn't exist. And what Netanyahu said, with Ahmadinejad, he was a wolf in wolf's clothing. Rouhani is a wolf in sheep's clothing. So he's learned to smile a lot, say all the right things to placate the West. And now maybe this administration is thinking of not proposing further sanctions. Rouhani is saying all the right things because of sanctions. We are crippling his economy. So now is not the time to let up on sanctions. Now is the time to add further sanctions. And you know, since this moderate reformist has taken over in Iran, there have been 150 executions of political prisoners, usually by hanging. And this is, nobody talks about that, but that is what's happening to freedom advocates in Iran. So Israel feels that they will what they said is, even if we have to take on Iran's nuclear weapons alone, we will do so, because we cannot afford to live with a nuclear Iran. And also, Lester, it will change the landscape of the Middle East, because you will have an arms race. Saudi Arabia will have nuclear weapons, the UAE, everyone is going to have nuclear weapons if we allow Iran to have nuclear weapons capability.
And no controls. That's the
no
big one.
controls, no verifiable. Just like in Syria, when they say, Assad says, come verify. We have no, in the middle of a civil war, how can you verify and confirm that you are actually removing all of the sites? He's going to tell us, here are the chemical weapons sites. Do you think that he's going to be telling the truth? How naive can we be? And the same thing with Rouhani. He is not a moderate. He is not a reformist. He was the chief negotiator for Iran on its nuclear weapons. And in his own book, he wrote, and this is a quote, while we kept the Europeans talking, we kept building our nuclear facility. These are his words. Mm-hmm. He is the master of deceit, and we're falling for the Rouhani ruse. That's what I call him.
Egypt today, we are discontinuing aid to Egypt.
It is the right thing to do. We cannot afford to be propping up a regime where we don't know when there will be elections. We don't know when the people will decide who their leaders will be. You know, we are going through a great recession. We have not climbed out of it. We have to use our resources wisely. We need to see once an election is held, once they elect leaders in an international supervised election, a free and fair and impartial election, who gets elected, and whether we want to help that government build a civil society. I think it was a mistake for the United States to endorse Morsi, to give Morsi the money that he so badly needed. He propped up the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood was anti-Christian, anti-female, anti-any religious group that was not of their liking. So it was wrong to use our taxpayers' dollars to prop up those that league of killers.
We have just about 3 minutes left, and I want to get to Florida. I want to get to your district. What's happening?
Well, it's great. The Florida economy is getting a little bit better. We are not done with hurricane season, and you know, October is a very busy time for hurricanes, believe it or not. But if we survive this hurricane season, tourists are going to be coming back to Florida in record numbers, and that's good for the economy. Miami is growing. We've got a lot of folks fleeing the unstable regimes in Venezuela, in Nicaragua. They're coming in with money to infuse our economic base. So things are looking up. It's still a problem. I'm not saying we're out of the recession. Foreclosures are no pun intended, through the roof. Too many foreclosures. People are not getting the jobs that they need and they deserve. So we have a jobless recovery. So things in one aspect are looking better because tourism is booming. On the other hand, we're not creating jobs, quality jobs, and the construction industry is just stagnant. So a little bit good, a little bit bad.
Well, I want to thank you, Illeana Ros-Lehtinen, for being so loquacious, let me put it that way.
I've been called worse.
And giving us such a widespread view of the world. And I must say that I'd like to have you back here on this program
ready.
On a regular
basis. And Lester,
basis.
what do you say about your show? This is the what? The longest? Go ahead, tell them.
Yes, it's the longest political fast show, longest running political affairs show in Washington.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
and then askcongress.net, and it can be seen around the world.
Right. Thank
Lester,
you again.
It's a joy. And the fact that you're working here with your grandson, good for you.
Well, thanks so much.
Family values, if the viewers could see them. Thank you. Thank you.
And now until next week at the same time, this is Lester Wolff saying so long from Washington.